Welcome to the Explainer. So, have you ever wondered if it's actually possible to become a billionaire without, totally compromising your morals? Today, we're unpacking a highly polarizing, honestly, pretty fascinating text called The Sovereign Path. It's essentially a manifesto that explores the alleged intersection of immense wealth, hidden societies, and what the author calls the spiritual nature of money. We're going to take a completely objective look at the claims made in this text, examining how it maps out this hidden underworld of generational power and how it proposes a really radical alternative to the systems we think we know. It's a wild, thought-provoking ride, so let's just get right into it. Okay, let's dive into the central question. This is the ultimate high-stakes dilemma set up right at the very beginning of our source material. The text argues that the general public holds this really deep-seated belief that to reach the absolute apex of global generational wealth, you inevitably have to compromise your morality. Basically, you have to sell out. But the author of The Sovereign Path challenges this premise head-on. They suggest that this assumption isn't just some cultural myth, but actually a carefully constructed trap. Section 1. The Spiritual Wealth Dilemma, the Unseen Trap. To really grasp this unseen trap, we gotta look at who the text says is being targeted. And it's not your greedy, cartoonish villains seeking power just for the sake of it. No, it describes brilliant, hardworking corporate professionals. People grinding out 80-hour weeks, running on their fifth cup of coffee, doing absolutely everything right, but still hitting this invisible ceiling. The author uses a really striking phrase here. They say these visionaries feel spiritually naked in the corporate world. Out of a sheer agonizing desperation to just break the cycle of poverty for their families, they go looking for backing in the unseen realm. But since they have no idea how this hidden world actually operates, they end up knocking on the exact wrong doors. And what's actually behind those wrong doors? Well, the text refers to them as killing orders. We're talking about the famous secret societies you constantly hear whispered about in pop culture. Groups like the Illuminati, ancient brotherhoods, or even regional legends like Isithwalo, which is a South African concept of dark wealth magic. The text neutrally defines these organizations as syndicates built entirely on a foundation of extraction. Sure, they promise immense financial reward, but the price of admission is inherently destructive. The author claims these rituals literally demand the sacrifice of a loved one, the breaking of a person's sanity, or the utter ruin of their own community. Section 2. Inside Killing Orders, this step-by-step trap. So how does a normal, hardworking person actually fall into something so extreme? According to Article 11 of the text, it happens step by step. It kicks off, like we just discussed, with profound corporate desperation. Step 2 is the unseen pledge, which is often made when the person doesn't even fully grasp the true cost of the contract. By step 3, the terrifying reality sets in. The author calls this a high-paying hostage situation. I mean, think about that. You get the millions, you get the sports cars, but suddenly you realize you cannot leave, and the demands of the syndicate are absolute, which leads straight into the final tragic destination at step 4. Section 3. The Ultimate Cost, Haunted Riches. This final destination is laid out in Article 12, and it presents this incredibly stark dichotomy. Basically, if you realize you've made a terrible mistake and pledged to a killing order, the text claims you are trapped in one of two nightmare realities. On one hand, if you stay and comply, you live in haunted riches. You have terrifying amounts of wealth, but you live in silent terror, slowly losing your mind and your peace to the dark environment you invited in. On the other hand, if you suddenly find your conscience, draw a line in the sand and refuse their despicable demands, the syndicate strips you of everything. You are left completely destitute, impoverished, and broken. The author kind of sums up this whole agonizing realization with a remarkably heavy quote. You are not a king, you are a prisoner. The text suggests that it's a uniquely painful experience to actually regret your own ambition, to look back at the days when you were just struggling and poor and realize you actually miss the peace of being spiritually unburdened. The illusion of power just completely falls away. Now, think about how often our society equates billionaires with inherent evil. The text calls this the greatest lie ever believed. Because the public sees the immense, sometimes terrifying wealth of these dark syndicates, they just assume that any acquisition of true generational power requires becoming evil. And because of this fear, millions of incredibly smart, morally grounded individuals actively avoid seeking any kind of ultimate power or spiritual backing. They voluntarily choose to remain exhausted, underfunded, and struggling, simply because they believe poverty is literally the only way to keep their conscience clean. Section 4. The Sacred Enterprise, the 30K Club Solution. But the sovereign path doesn't just outline a problem, it introduces a highly organized solution. Maintaining our objective distance here, let's take a look at the 30K Club. The text positions this group as a sanctuary for the ambitious. The author claims it operates on a higher spiritual law and acts as the exact counterforce to those destroying orders we just talked about. Crucially, the text asserts this isn't about rejecting wealth. No, the 30K Club supposedly offers the exact same scale of wealth. We're talking massive capital injections, elite networking, global influence, but it does so under a mandate called sacred enterprise. Their claim is that their rituals and operations are fundamentally designed to guard life rather than take it. And this brilliantly illustrates the sharp philosophical polarization the author is setting up. On one side, you have the killing orders, which the text defines as totally parasitic, demanding you sacrifice others to fuel your own rise through pure extraction. On the other side, the 30K Club operates on the exact opposite polarity. It's creative. Rather than demanding the blood of others, it demands the sacrifice of your own ego. Instead of extraction, the focus is strictly on long-term institution building. The text even gets into the specifics of the initiation process for this alternative path, an ordeal they call the dark room. Again, contrasting with the rumors of dark blood rituals, the author states that the dark room demands absolute self-accountability and discipline. The initiation requires the total sacrifice of personal greed, challenging the initiate instead to build civilization, to construct institutions robust enough to feed their families and communities not just for tomorrow, but for the next 100 years. It's an initiation of immense responsibility, not moral compromise. Section 5. Walking the Third Path. A call to discipline. Which brings us to the text's ultimate real-world claims, because the sovereign path doesn't just keep things theoretical. Article 13 concludes with a very specific operational claim. The author states that this network is currently deploying hundreds of millions in what they call the Southern African District. These funds are allegedly being channeled to individuals who are bold enough to wield this level of authority specifically for the good of their nation. It's an assertion of immense financial and regional scale, positioning this secret enterprise as a highly active, disruptive force right now. So the author's final argument is that you no longer have to choose between remaining powerless and exhausted in the light or gaining the world but losing your soul in the dark. They propose a third way, a path of absolute discipline and self-sacrifice for the sake of true generational building. It leaves us with a really heavy question to ponder. If a clean, incredibly powerful alternative to the dark systems actually exist, are you disciplined enough to walk it? It's a truly fascinating look at the psychology of wealth, ambition, and morality. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep questioning the systems around you.